Thank you and welcome to today's webinar program, 4 Ways Intelligent Data Capture Optimizes Invoice Processing, brought by the Accounts Payable Network and sponsored by Abby. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. If you have any technical questions, please use the chat box and we will respond right away. If you have any issues with audio sound, click on the phone icon above the chat window to receive the teleconference information. To ensure call quality, everyone's lines have been muted. The link was sent to registered attendees this morning prior to the webinar. I've also displayed the link to the handout in the chat box that you should be seeing on the right-hand side of your screen. If you're connected, you can log on again using the instructions provided in your initial confirmation email. If you continue to experience difficulties, please email webinars@iofm.com. We encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation. Please type your questions into the chat box and hit send to submit them. If we're not able to get to all the questions, we will respond post-webinar via email. This program will be recorded and you will receive a thank you email with the on-demand materials within 2 business days. Our speakers for today are Mark Russo and Bruce Orcott. For more than 2 decades, Mark Russo has been a leading analyst and researcher in business process optimization. He is a trusted resource to end users across vertical industries, as well as to top providers of solutions and services for human resources, financial services, and healthcare organizations. He frequently presents at industry events and is a popular participant on webinars, including those from IOFM and Recruiting Trends. He's a veteran product marketing and product management professional with over 20 years of experience in enterprise software. Bruce is currently Vice President of Product Marketing and Management at Abby, where he is responsible for data capture and automation products and systems with specific emphasis on invoice processing, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and automated mailroom solutions. Prior to joining Abby, Bruce was the Senior Director of Product Marketing at Kofax. I'd like to welcome Bruce and Mark.
Thank you much, Shelley, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Before we get started, I wanted to give Bruce a chance to tell us a little bit about Abby, our sponsor for today's webinar. Bruce?
Thank you, Mark. Good morning, everybody on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you in the Midwest and on the East Coast. But essentially is a leading provider of data capture and document automation technologies. Core technology that's involved in many of these solutions that are built around the automation of invoice processing and accounts payable. So we are the company that helps you turn your paper information and your paper content into digital assets and information as part of your AP process. And I look forward to presenting it to you today as part of this overall presentation being led by Mark.
Thanks so much, Bruce. Our topic is optimizing accounts payable. Despite all the efforts we've made as an industry to rid ourselves of paper processes, today 50% of all invoices that organizations receive are still paper-based. And it's not always the case that electronic invoices go straight through. Today we're going to talk about how we can use technologies like intelligent data capture to optimize not only paper, but also electronic documents that you receive in your accounts payable departments. And so discuss today is the problems with paper processes, as if I need to tell you, but remind you and make you feel badly about yourselves for just a few moments, and then give you some solutions. We're going to talk about how IDR technology specifically addresses these problems and uniquely addresses them in some cases. I'm going to share with you 5 critical components of IDR. So if you get excited about this type of technology, what it is you need to look for in a solution. We'll also illustrate the benefits. Bruce is going to share a case study with you. We started. Let's do a poll question to set the table. What now? Which of the following has been the biggest challenge for your accounts payable department? Is it A, a lack of visibility into payables? Is it B, difficulty handling and managing invoices? Is it C, high error rates? Or is it D, high cost of processing an invoice? Take a respond to that poll question now displayed on your screen. We're going to discuss the results in just a moment. So we're hearing tremendous interest among accounts payable professionals for technologies that not only image incoming documents, but also optimize the process using technologies such as IDR. What's happening? Are we seeing a maturation of thinking from accounts payable departments that it's just not enough to scan documents, maybe even on the back end, which many people did initially?
Yeah, definitely a trend now and a need to really help automate this process. Budgets are tight. The expectations are that technology will help automate and deliver this vision of straight-through processing. There's a lot of interest in people trying to just make it efficient and error-free as possible. But also there's multiple dimensions, and I'm curious to see the results here because some customers, while focused on the automation and the advancements that the technology brings for straight-through processing, have a very simple need, which is they need to get rid of the paper as soon as possible because they want to provide better feedback, be responsive to their suppliers, because that may be a need that they have because of the questions they get and the follow-up they get. So the technology serves multiple needs, and it's interesting to find what draws them to these solutions. But normally it's the straight-through processing and the automation and the elimination of the human touch points that make it very beneficial.
We're hearing a lot of interest in automation to help drive reporting and auditing and compliance processes. Folks need to figure out what's coming through their organizations. Is that a big motivator you're hearing from the organizations you're talking to?
All industries, actually, we see that as very important. The amount of information and the data and the insight that is provided within these documents is very, very important. So while they just need one piece of data to pay the invoice, but there's a lot of other information that's contained in documents that people leverage as part of an analytics, understand their customers, or understanding other revenue opportunities or other business opportunities. So it's a broad use case for this type of technology.
When we look at how our attendees responded to our poll question, it was very interesting. 42% of the attendees on the line identified difficulty handling and managing invoices as their biggest challenge in accounts payable. 20% of our attendees, Bruce, said high error rates. We'll talk more about that a little later. 19% of attendees identified lack of visibility into payables information, what we were just discussing. 18% identified the high cost of processing an invoice. So 42% of our attendees say that difficulty handling and managing invoices is their biggest AP challenge. So what are some of those difficulties that you're encountering when you go into manual, paper-based shops, Bruce?
It's the touch points and the unknown. No information. The business has no understanding of what sits on someone's desk when it's in a paper form. And then the cost of moving the paper and moving that document and the latency inherent in that process is impactful to the business. And as things get lost or they get misplaced or there's no visibility, that challenges and it creates customer service problems. It creates high costs of servicing that customer who's now calling. What's the status of my payment? Did you my invoice? Those type of things. So that's all part of the handling process. So if you have a highly distributed environment, invoices from multiple sites and multiple locations via mail, it just creates a lot of overhead that isn't necessarily efficient in the overall processing of that invoice.
We want you to use the chat tool on your screen to send us the challenges you're specifically having in handling and managing invoices. Go ahead, use that chat tool, send them to us. And, of course, we won't name you, but we'll discuss those challenges later on. So when we look at the accounts payable landscape, the visit remains largely paper-based. IOFM's annual AP study identified that a slight majority of all invoices that organizations receive are still paper-based. And unfortunately, many organizations are still processing those paper-based invoices manually. In fact, in a study conducted by AIM recently, they found more than a quarter of organizations have no account payable solution and no plans to implement one. You can see that many of them, many organizations have plans to implement it within the next year to 18 months, and some are leveraging technologies from multiple parties. But the fact remains that many organizations are processing not only paper invoices, but processing them manually. And that leads to many of the difficulties that Bruce identified and you all are sending to us. And we'll look at the notion of what complications those paper invoices create. Well, it really spans the gamut. I talked to organizations such as the AP show, ones at the AP show I'm at today. Well, it looks like PO-based invoices are becoming much more easier to manage, right? You have some information against which to match the invoice. You can even do three-way matching to those straight through, as Bruce was explaining. The real problem is with those non-PO-based invoices, which unfortunately represent the majority of invoices at the majority of organizations. And when AIM asked companies what were their biggest challenges in processing non-PO-based invoices, you could see matching the invoice to the PO was the #1 challenge, right? So it's matching that information, getting the correct data off the paper, and getting it to your accounting or ERP system. Additionally, companies by completing the sign-off routing on time. We know that accounts payable is measured based on invoices paid on time, the #1 metric against which you are all measured. When you have non-PO-based invoices and you have to get at that information manually and route it manually, that takes a long time. In fact, according to Aberdeen Group, it takes more than 2 weeks on average and much, much longer in many cases at many organizations. So completing the sign-off routing on time is a big issue for organizations. Complicating matters is the fact that your boss is probably putting pressure on you to capture more early payment discounts. You've probably already negotiated discounts with your suppliers based on when you pay them. But those and controllers and treasurers are looking for more opportunities to capture more early payment discounts. The fact is that if it's taking you 2 weeks to process a non-PO invoice, the window already closed. In fact, many organizations that are even more efficient still are banging up against that 10-day window in which you start to see the early payment discounts. This is another issue that comes up over and over again. As Bruce identified, when you route invoices manually for approval, they sit on somebody's desk. They fall behind somebody's desk. They get wrapped up in some other file. Somebody spills their coffee on them. This is all laughable, but it's all true. In fact, 22% of all business documents get lost, misplaced, or stolen, according to AIM. And this is probably happening with your paper invoices, and you may not even realize it. So when your suppliers call and say, "Where is my invoice in the process?" you not even know, and for good, legitimate reasons. Of course, we also have the case that's related to that where someone goes on vacation or they leave for maternity leave while an invoice is sitting in their inbox. This simply does not happen in an electronic environment. And so you can see the rest of the problems, and these are all real issues for organizations today. Of course, that many folks hone on when it comes to invoice processing is the cost. Aberdeen Group, a paper invoice at an average organization costs about $13.80 to process. The best is that at a less than average organization, the cost is actually more than $20 per invoice. And I'm skeptical of all those numbers because many organizations consider allocation of costs much differently. So are you factoring in your real estate? Are you factoring in your electrical? Well, in many organizations, that's not the case. They're usually using their labor and dividing by the number of invoices, and they might not be factoring in support personnel such as IT. So the cost can be much, much higher. Well, in an automated environment, those costs are just a fraction. And Bruce talked about that during his case study. But the key thing is that paper invoice processing remains a very costly proposition. And when you factor in the compliance risks, the impact to supplier relationships, the missed discounts and the late payments, well, the costs go through the roof. And this, for many organizations, is just an untenable situation. Paper invoice data is also inaccessible. So when you think about a piece of paper in the scenarios I described, it's impossible in many cases, to get at the information you need in a timely manner. In fact, according to a survey done by AIM, 10% of organizations said that their AP documents were not easy to find at all. They get stored in a file. Once they're processed, they get stored in a file cabinet. Maybe they're sent off-site to a third-party supplier who stores them. And these are really hard to get at when supplier calls come in. In fact, another 25% of attendees said that even if the information's available on paper, it's not easy to access online. We gave the example of distributed workforce, and today we know that our economy is becoming much, much more global, even for small companies. It's not uncommon to have multiple offices all around the country and maybe across countries, and these folks need to access invoice information for approvals. They're the ones who initiated the purchase. They're the ones who need to manage their budgets or manage against their budgets. And so can't get at that information online. What does that mean? Somebody's got to get on a phone, get somebody at the other location to go find the information for them, make sure it's the right information, and then go get it to them. Scan it, fax it, email it, even some cases ship it. And so this is a situation that is not ideal for today's global economy. The line, paper invoice processing also limits cash management. Information is not captured. It is poorly organized. Information is not timely. System not well integrated. Think about your organization for a moment. How are you getting information into the variety of legacy systems that you have that make your finance department run? Well, chances are you're probably keying it. In fact, in many organizations, it's not just about the ERP system anymore. Right? We used to always talk about how people would be heads down and key it into the ERP system so that the suppliers could get paid. Today, we know that in many finance departments, systems work together to manage working capital and supplier relationships. So in one large construction company I'm aware of, they not only integrate their ERP system, by the way, they have 8 instances of ERP across their global shared services environment, but also tie in their CRM system, as well as their inventory system, as well as their sales system, so they can pay salespeople appropriately based on what's coming through the accounts payable department. In an environment, it's impossible to integrate these systems well, and you need a way to electronify it to pull all of this together. And finally, in a paper environment, we know that the boss doesn't have access to key variables. How can we know in real time what's going on with your finances? Most organizations today, according to IOFM's fall study of controllers, found that most organizations are doing reporting once a quarter. Well, we understand intuitively that that is not soon enough to make agile business decisions. Organizations need to have more, if not real-time, at least near-time access to information to make smarter business decisions. And so, paper environment, it's really hard to get access to those key variables. When you look at all of this, it's not just you all, the AP professionals, who are concerned about this. These are your controller right now probably wondering how it is that they can use your organization to help improve their objectives. When we look at what's important to a controller, the number one priority is improving visibility into cash flow and cash management, unlocking the information on those paper invoices and documentation. Their top priority, developing effective measures to gain visibility into the performance of your department. Again, it's hard to tell with a piece of paper which you can't track, that you don't know where it is in the process. You simply don't know the health of your system and your processes. And controllers are concerned about these things too. And why are they so worried about them? Well, the number one priority of controllers, according to a study we did back in the fall, is cash flow analysis. They learned a lesson from the Great Recession. They now know that they need to manage the cash more wisely. And you can do that if it's locked on a piece of paper, stored off-site in a cardboard box that nobody can get access to. Automation provides the capabilities that your controllers and their boss, the CFO, requires. So helps drive cash management. So when you look at organizations and what information they're tracking, the number one thing your business is tracking in the finance and F&A is cash flow against current and future expenses. Here again, the opportunity to capture information from your invoices to drive cash management. And when at the big challenges that the C-suite controllers see when it comes to AP, it's visibility, this lack of visibility. So we're all focused on cost. We often get wrapped up in what is the cost of processing an invoice, whereas the boss is probably focused on the lack of visibility into invoices and payables information. And so when many of you tell me that you struggle to get solutions such as IDR or other technologies cost justified or approved by the boss, I challenge you to think of how it is you're positioning it. Are you only talking to them in terms of the cost of the solution and the savings it will give them, or are you framing it in terms that they really care about, such as visibility? And Bruce is going to describe to you in a little while how intelligent data recognition improves visibility. But this is much more just a discussion about cost. And the most important metric to the C-suite, it's cash flow management. And so this is what they're focused on. That brings us to our next poll question, which is about to be displayed on your screen. What percentage of invoices that you get in non-EDI formats, or alternatively on paper? What percentage of invoices that you get in non-EDI formats, or alternatively paper? Is it less than 30%? Is it 30 to 70%? Or more than 70%? To respond to the poll question, now displayed on your screen. We'll discuss the results in just a moment. Talk about this idea of electronifying paper invoices. The fact is that once something goes electronic, it doesn't necessarily solve all of the problems of an AP department, does it?
Certainly not. They still have to run the business rules. They still have to understand the data contained within documents. So yes, they're getting pure text, but they have to match that information, measure it against other processes, other business rules, measure it against the purchase order database to make sure that it is in fact legitimate in what they ordered and that it is compliant with what they expected to receive. So those business rules that they've implemented for the paper-based process also apply to the incoming data from a digital stream or email or whatever the electronic format of the invoice being submitted is received in. So the process is the same. It
strikes me that folks apply a manual process to an electronic delivery stream. I'll give you an example at a healthcare workshop I facilitated yesterday at the conference I'm attending. Many healthcare providers were very proud that they're driving many of their invoices to an email box. Unfortunately, in many cases, the providers were then printing out emails and keying that information from paper. Alternatively, some of them were keying it from a screen, so they had dual screens for their operators to open the email electronically and key that information. That doesn't have to be the case, does it, Bruce?
It does, and actually that case is quite interesting to me. As a technologist and evangelist for these type of technologies, I see in all industries customers taking something that's digitally born, that's received digitally. They then print it out to then be inserted into their process from the analog printout into a digital form. It's quite interesting to see that process, but that's how a lot of companies process information, and it's not uncommon.
AIM has if you're interested in more on that subject, AIM has a study they did that shows that more than a quarter of all transactions documents that start life electronically are actually processed as paper. I asked you, what is the percentage of invoices that you get in non-EDI formats, or alternatively, on paper? 30% of you said you receive 30 to 70% of your invoices in non-EDI formats. 35% of you said you receive more than 70% of your invoices in non-EDI formats, and 1/4 of you less than 30%. Bruce, this is pretty sobering, isn't it?
The reality of what we deal with today is that invoices are still originating and being submitted via paper processes. It's just the way that the process has been built, and it's the way these systems work today. And I think it has to also do with the we all look to go electronic, and we all believe in the benefits of being electronic, but it's still not sure yet in across the 1,000.
And let's do another poll question related to this subject. It's about to be displayed on your screen. Do you have a solution in place that captures data from paper and PDF invoices? Do you have a solution in place that captures data from paper and PDF invoices? A, yes, and we're happy with it. Yes, but it could be better. Or C, no, we're keying it all in. Respond to that poll question now displayed on your screen. What are you seeing in the market, Bruce, in terms of the shift from paper to other forms of invoices? Is it email that's been the biggest recipient? Are you seeing much uptake in e-invoicing? Is fax hanging in there? Give me a sense of what the overview of the different input channels is today in the AP organizations you're talking to.
Well, it certainly seems to be the most prevalent we see, and the need to be able to just automate that ingestion of that invoice straight from the email stream while protecting the header and footer information of the email as metadata in the AP process. So email certainly has a significant uptick. Electronic invoicing is interesting. A lot of companies are looking at it as future investment, but a near-term problem to solve today, which we saw from the previous poll, which is all paper they have to deal with in the near term as an immediate problem. And so we see a lot of companies looking towards digital invoicing solutions long term, but it doesn't eliminate the immediate need that they have today, which is this paper problem that they're suffering from.
We received a question from an attendee. They said, my biggest challenge in accounts payable today is setting up the invoice recognition software to cover all different types of invoices. It's a lot, and it's tricky. What do you do to someone like that?
Well, there are historic solutions in the market that do have that concept of cost, of being costly. What ABBY is taking a different approach to this problem, which is we've pre-trained our system, and we use a learning-based system to understand the content and find the information related to the invoice to automatically extract it. And so the costs have changed significantly from the setup and administration of a system. The costs have come down significantly with these latest sets of technologies. And so the cost of deploying, the cost of creating people would call templates, understand the invoices, that has come way down. And so what we've done is we've packaged it up so that it's more or less out of the box to give you that level of accuracy or that level of performance you would expect. But always some element that every customer is different. Some people receive invoices for all intents and purposes that are almost handwritten. Some receive very nice, beautifully printed, very clean invoices that are very easy to extract, while others receive Excel spreadsheets. So the use is very broad. And so the goal is to have a solution that can capture all this information and help you deliver the best straight processing. And that's what I think we've done with our learning-based system from ABBY.
Great question. I know we have a few more in the queue. Keep them coming. We'll answer them at the appropriate time. We ask you, do you have a solution in place that captures data from paper and PDF invoices? The majority of you do not. You're keying it all in. 54% of you, in fact, are keying it all in. Bruce is smiling. 30% of you say you do, but it could be better, and 14% of you say you do, and you're very happy with it. Bruce, let's talk about the 32%. Yes, but it could be better. What do you reckon are challenges, or what do you hear are challenges with someone who hasn't optimized it, and what advice do you give them?
So it has a lot to do with expectations. Some of these solutions that have been sold in the market were sold with this brilliant vision of some level of accuracy. And frankly, many of the solutions, when it's down to it, don't deliver on the accuracy, or the cost to get to the accuracy that the customer expected were significantly higher than the budgeted allocation for the project. And so that's a challenge, and that's why some of the advanced technologies that are being applied to the problem are helping to solve that and reduce that, improve the overall effectiveness of these solutions. And that's why we focus so much on delivering just this complete out-of-the-box package to read this. Others tend to have the challenge of things evolve and change, and you get new suppliers and administrative costs. And so by letting a learn-by-example solution, like what we do with our technology from Abby, is that it learns and evolves over time as your use cases changes, as you have new suppliers come on board. The system doesn't have to be retrained or retaught or reconfigured every time you see a new supplier. And that's the benefit of this type of solution. So I think people have expectations, and maybe it wasn't implemented properly, or maybe the technology wasn't ready, or maybe they didn't know the whole broad spectrum of the types of invoices they were receiving. And so from the start of the project, maybe it wasn't implemented to be highly optimized for their needs.
We have a question from an attendee that goes perfectly into the next slides we're going to discuss, Bruce. And that's my biggest challenge is invoice approval processes. How does this type of technology accelerate those invoice approval windows? And so Bruce is now going to talk to us about how the current environment might look and how it might look in an automated environment.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. It's interesting. So with this data that we're showing here on the screen from the survey, you see a lot of people are doing things manually, or a lot of additional manual costs trying to leverage their automated system. And one of my customers early on had indicated the benefits of this solution, and she was very emphatic when I was talking to the group, and she stopped me and said, "Bruce, your systems deliver 5 things. That's speed, cost, visibility, control, and quality." And really powerful to me as a marketer and a technologist in this space was understanding from a customer, understanding what the solution that technology derives for them. With the manual processes that many of the people on the phone and on this call are doing, is they have branch offices, they have remote areas and a room where invoices are received, and then the level of latency from the time the invoice was generated to the time the invoice is actually actionable in the accounts payable process. And that's a highly measurable metric, because it's measured in days, it's measured in time and customer service and responsiveness. We talked about early pay discounts. Those are all things that are affected by this solution. But more importantly, you now have costs of managing this paper, managing the routing of this information manually, and then getting information into your core systems that help to adjudicate and pay and ultimately pay this claim or this invoice. So you have a lot of costs and you have a lot of latency. And you did indicate the Aberdeen study, which says it's a 2-week process. And we see that to be very common in our customers. So this is a very real problem, which is they have the latency of the time, and then they have the cost of managing the paper and getting the information off the paper in their record in their core business systems to help pay, make payment is made and it's fully visible in the AP process. Okay, see the slide? As we move on to now looking at this as a problem and seeing what types of technologies Abby can provide to help solve this problem, we can help automate the ingest of this information at the remote sites, at your mailroom, be able to capture this information immediately, make it electronic, properly secure this information, but more importantly, extract information, read the information on the invoice, and then feed that into your AP process, into your dashboards, into your payable system. So now it's action information. It's content that you can leverage to help walk this through the process of paying the invoice. And many times, we can help eliminate not only the touch point and the manual labor associated with inputting the information and making the paper, also because the data, the confidence in the data, the accuracy of the data, it's now more able to flow in a straight-through process from the time it was received in the mailroom or the time it was received at a remote location at your branch office to the time it's action information within your payables process, and now the invoice can be paid. So we're talking about reducing the staff that needs to touch the invoice, free up your staff from having to do manual data entry to actually working on accelerating the payables process, reducing that 2-week time into just days, which has a significant ROI for your business, has significant impact to the bottom line, and it means that you're much more effective and contributing in more real time to your overall solution.
Bruce, errors are a big concern, not only of AP professionals, but also their management. One interesting fact from the IOFM controller study that we did in the fall is that controllers think they have a problem with AP quality, too many errors. Does this process help resolve that problem? And how do you address the concern some folks have that, well, if I can't have somebody eyeball the invoice, there's going to be more errors? Talk to me about those two pieces.
There's that human element where people have that confidence because they looked at it. The idea is that there's multiple data sources already within the AP process, like a purchase order database. We read information and match it to that and then correct information automatically. Also, the error rate that is usually generated by having humans just touch something. Most humans, if you ask them to enter information, if they're highly educated and highly motivated, you can expect a 96% accuracy off that entry, right? But by having an intelligence system extract data, match the data, validate the data, and have some level of confidence, you can free your human operators just to look at low-cost information. Or say, I always want to have someone validate invoices and the data over a certain amount. Or have somebody review just to have everything reviewed, but I like it in an electronic form because now I can guide them to where information is. They can make these decisions and check this information much quicker. So the system is highly optimized and highly tuned so that you can meet all those various use cases. I want to have everyone review every invoice, but guide them to find the information. I want to have them review specific amounts and totals and line items based upon certain criteria, or to have some exceptions based upon low confidence. Somebody views the amounts or the totals or specific quantities and things like that. And architecting the right solution based upon your use case is completely open. And that's the benefit of these type of systems, is if you have the use case where you want to be able to touch and feel every invoice, not a problem. If you have the use case where now you have confidence because you see the results coming through and the high level of accuracy, let it go straight through. And then if you're somewhere in between, we create right environment, right ergonomics of a user interface to then validate this information as you deem appropriate. But it is important, and it's never 100% perfect. The idea is what is the tolerable, acceptable rate, knowing accuracy has its flaws, and then how do you bring automated technology together with human intervention to give you the level of accuracy or the level of straight-through processing that your business receives the best ROI on. As we look at basically automating this end-to-end solution and helping you ingest this information for automated invoice processing, we really help you start at the branch office, start at wherever information is received, wherever invoices are received, whether in the mailroom, in the branch, in a home office, and digitize that at that point of entry. The invoice is received, digitize it, apply your corporate business rules to the document, submit it to the payables process, read the information automatically without human intervention, and then write it to the right process for it can then go to the payables process or some review process or some routing and approval process. So we're helping you automate that front end, automate the first few critical steps of that process to be most efficient and most effective for your AP system. And what this is really helping you do is eliminate the latency, the cost of touching the paper and the cost of any information manually, and improve overall data quality. And hopefully you derive the straight-through processing benefits, the ability and transparency benefits for the early pay discounts, the ability to resolve errors more quickly and more appropriately, the to be responsive to your suppliers on inquiry, and things like that. So that's really the overall and the benefits once you configure this entire solution as part of your front end. And Mark indicated many of our customers that we're dealing with have multiple ERPs. And the benefit of this flow, and they may have other ERPs coming online because of acquisitions and mergers and things like that. This flow is you can standardize on a universal front end using the system, and then integrate to whatever systems that may be online or may have to be leveraged as part of an M&A or part of your onboarding new businesses into your environment. So it is this universal front end for all your AP processes. The critical elements are multi-channel, which really we spoke about earlier. We talked about email and the importance of electronic information. So receive it via the email channel, maybe come via fax, via web, or an upload, or an FTP post, via document scanners, via multifunction devices and branch offices that are scanning this information. Being able to then leverage any source, a mobile phone, a tablet, what source is available to my users in the locations where invoices are being received, and now I can digitize it at the most important moment and enable my system to get this benefits of straight-through processing. The ability to identify your suppliers and buyer identification based upon databases and your purchase order database. Extract data, understanding how to find information and read this information. Again, eliminating the keying. Purchasing is very, very important. If you're leveraging purchase orders and you have that benefit, let's use that information to help match the information from the invoice. Escalate any exceptions. Did I receive a full order or a partial order? Are they charging me the wrong amounts based upon what I expected? Understand this information, escalate that for faster resolution to the problem. And only the goal is straight-through processing, really human intervention, and allowing your AP clerks to be most effective in servicing the overall AP process, servicing the suppliers, servicing their business line of business colleagues within their enterprise. Multi-channel capture, we talked about the AIM study that Mark indicated the amount of information that's coming in electronically. This is really important. And processing electronic invoices, as we said, really follows the same flow. It follows the same flow of information because you have to validate that the information contained within that electronically sourced document matches and still applies to the same business rules. We spoke about all this earlier. And the ability now to connect to any source of the information is very, very, very powerful. So now you can enable your users in branch offices to leverage the multifunction device that they also use for printing. If they want to use a fax server to be able to fax this information, we can leverage that. Email we spoke about. So all these channels are very, very important. A key element, you have ground truth information. You have source information in data and databases that you have access to. We leverage that to purify information, to correct for any OCR errors or correct for any information that was missing. We utilize this information to make the right decision so that way you get the benefits of straight-through processing. Multiple addresses contained within an invoice. Multiplication, it's amazing the amount of normalization that a lot of companies require because just because a company may be, for example, called IBM, they may be in your system as I.B.M, IBM, International Business Machines, all kinds of different elements, and we want to normalize this information. We can normalize and correct this information to be compliant with whatever your corporate standards are. And this is why automatic identification and leveraging your other data sources really helps make the system more effective and more efficient for you to preserve that you have the right information, but also you're not creating new records in your databases and new suppliers because of abbreviations and things like that. Understanding how to find information. It's amazing the variety of data sources and information contained within an invoice, and understanding of how to go find information because on one invoice from one supplier it's in the upper left-hand corner, on the next supplier it's in the lower right-hand corner. And the idea is not to create a template for every supplier. That's crazy and unmanageable. The system has to be smart enough to find this information, understand that data, extract it, validate it, and deliver it to your accounts payable process. So entering the delivery dates, the purchase order information, the suppliers, and the proper addresses, and the line items, and all the information contained within the line items, and the subtotals, and the tax. Understanding that information has to be pre-configured and out of the box, ready for you to leverage within your environment. Because pretty much invoices in our mind are a semi-structured document. We know the information we're looking for. We just need to now find it. And every invoice does have its own uniquenesses to its layout and its structure to help us, so we have a smart system that understands how to find that information. You have excellent ground truth in your system if you're getting PO-based invoices. So the ability to go in and match this information, understand the data, did I receive a full shipment? Utilizing that information to help correct for any OCR errors or correct for any low confidence extraction results, help us really improve straight-through processing and improve the performance of the system. Again, accelerating that transaction so you have the opportunity to take advantage of early pay discounts, the opportunity to have accurate data without human intervention. So looking at these line items and things is really, really important. We talked about touchless processing. This is important because this is a measurable ROI of your environment. How much time do I need to spend reviewing this information that was extracted by the system or information manually? If I can eliminate that and I have it go straight through, what's my business benefit? And that's the ultimate goal. Straight through processing to feed AP systems so you can get right to the approval and posting process without all the exception handling and business rules and correction required, because you either have to manually enter information or the system's not trained or not able to actually find information. So straight through processing, touchless processing is really, really important. Surveys that came out and in this great AIM study, when talking to AP departments, the benefits they received and how it helped optimize them was really the fast turnaround time. And that turnaround time many times is measured not only in the Aberdeen average of 2 weeks down to days, but also the visibility and the better monitoring of the system, understanding what is within my system, what type of payables do I have coming due, or what's sitting on people's desks now that I was now within the system, and now I know what my expectations are from a cash flow standpoint. So it's this visibility and this accelerated process that's really, really of beneficial importance to our AP customers. And they have to know about the costs, and there's significant savings that customers achieve by leveraging these type of automated processes and automated systems. In the AIM study, it was a little over 25%, closer to 30% was the average reduction in costs. And that's not necessarily changing the head count or changing your staffing. That's efficiencies and the benefits gained by this type of technology deployed to help automate this front end to the overall process. Benefit. And then, of course, the ROI, highly measurable, highly effective in these environments, and most customers receiving an ROI well within their 12-month frame, which is really beneficial as you look at prioritizing projects within the IT organization, within your line of business. Get a project at the level of priority where it will be implemented is important when you can really show a validated and documented ROI. And AP and this invoice processing process really delivers on that ROI, and it's validated by the AIM study. A case study here, it's a logistics company that provides freight accounting and payment solutions for a number of their customers. And they basically, through their system, are paying over $1 billion in invoices annually through their systems, and they support over 1,200 carriers nationally. And the benefit is, or the risk is, dealing with freight invoices are extremely challenging. It's one of the more difficult studies because a lot of the technologies where the invoices are received are on standard matrix printers. The quality of the paper isn't necessarily so great. The originals have challenges, so it's really a challenging environment. And this customer was dealing with 3.5 million paper documents a year, and so that's roughly 1 million invoices essentially coming into to be processed for this customer. If you look at the samples, those of you on the phone deal with this every day are like, "No, these are beautiful. These aren't challenging. This is nothing. You should see my invoices." That's a normal statement I get when meeting with the various AP teams that we get to interact with. But here's a sample. You know, all these invoices come in different formats, different sizes, different structures, different layouts. It's just the nature of the beast. It's not an industry standard. If you look globally at some markets like in Germany, invoices are pretty similar in Germany. So processing invoices in the European market, not as challenging as it is in the United States, simply because we have no standards, right? Every company can do it their own. They choose to do it and just put them out there. And us on the AP side have to learn how to handle that information. If we look at benefits were for AFS, started with a system that had 32 full-time people as part of the process. They had 3 people in the mailroom that were receiving information, prepping the invoices to be processed, 4 people scanning them. They only were automatically capturing 2 specific fields, and the rest of the fields on the invoice in order to prepare it for payment were being entered manually. And they had a pretty good performance metric, though. They were looking at 5 days of processing time from the time the invoice was received till payment. So they were definitely under the 2-week window by Aberdeen as the average. But after deploying the Abby solution, they really were able to optimize their system, make it more efficient, improve the straight-through processing. They went from 32 full-time people down to 24. On the people needed in the mailroom, those that were needed for scanning, and those that were needed for the entry. But the benefit is that even though the number went down only by 4 for data entry, the amount of fields, the amount of data they were receiving and processing was significant. So now they have additional transparency in their system, additional data for analytics to understand spend analysis, do type of analytics and research against this information that's coming from within their invoices. So now they have much more information, and they scaled the processing time down to 2 to 3 days. And over the first year, received a $60,000 in additional savings. So benefit, great example of leveraging this technology in a invoice processing environment that was highly challenging, highly complex, and showing the benefits that this particular customer received.
Let's go ahead and launch our next poll question, our last poll question, which is about to be displayed on your screen. What has been the biggest barrier to acquiring new technologies that would help improve your AP metrics? What has been your biggest barrier to acquiring new technologies that would help improve your AP metrics? Has it been lack of management support? Has it been a budget? Or has it been a lack of provable return on investment? Go ahead and take a moment to respond to the poll question now displayed on your screen. Bruce, I know there's people on the phone right now looking at that AFS business case, and they're on one hand impressed, and on the other hand trying to figure out how they can apply that to their operation. How does someone on the phone go about to start working through building a business case for this type of technology? Where's the low-hanging fruit they should look at or look for in their operation? And what are some common mistakes they make in building a business case, or things they overlook as areas of savings and improvement?
Well, it's interesting. The ability to justify a business case is normally very straightforward to build the case, and it's really around it's human capital. People are dedicated toward entering information. How many people are dedicated towards the manual touching of this paper, and what's the cost of getting this into the system? And normally it's a really easy ROI calculation. The challenge is because where does this fit within the rest of the IT projects? Where does this fit from a budgeting standpoint, with other priorities within either the department or within finance in general? Those are some of the challenges, but the creating ROI and understanding it is pretty straightforward. It's a normal, very straightforward math calculations related to how many invoices am I receiving, and based upon those invoices that are being received, coming up with a proper calculation as to how much we think we could automate, how much we could reduce the amount of touch points that people have to manually review, and can basically come up with a very straightforward analysis for an ROI pretty quickly.
So what has been the biggest barrier to acquiring new technologies that would improve your AP metrics? 43% of you said a lack of budget. 20% of you said a lack of provable why. 28% of you said a lack of management support. Lack of budget. How do we overcome that, Bruce? Because that's a reality for obviously many organizations.
Undoubtedly, it is a big challenge. And so really what it comes down to is sitting down and creating the proper ROI metric to validate that there is business benefit here. There's savings that can be garnered that help them allocate resources to other areas of their business, other areas within the department. And so it's a matter of sitting down and creating the right calculation. Because when the calculations are done with most customers, finding that budget is difficult. We create that compelling method and the business benefits to the management team. So it starts with that type of analysis and then creating the right business case. And normally then it's a matter of what are the priorities and what other challenges are within the enterprise that are going to garner the resources for the foreseeable future from an IT standpoint. But it's a pretty straightforward ROI calculation.
I just read a note from one of the attendees, Bruce, who makes a point I hear very often, and that is we don't have any extra staff. And you're suggesting that the labor savings necessarily means elimination of staff. It just means they don't have to do manual keying. Isn't that right?
Absolutely correct. It's really unlikely and highly rare where the staff is terminated or reduced. There's a reduction in force. Staff is normally reallocated to higher value functions within that same business, within the payables department or within other parts of finance. So it's not necessarily a reduction in staff. What is focused on is making that staff more efficient and more effective and more contributing to the benefits of the business versus do manual data entry type of work.
With accounts payable, it remains largely paper-based, and it remains a largely manual affair in many organizations. And when we look at those paper processes, well, the fact of life is they cost too much, they take too long, and they really inhibit your visibility, both into your finances as well as to your system and business health. Your bosses are really keen on automating accounts payable. In particular, they're interested in improving visibility. And intelligent data recognition addresses all of these challenges. It supports documents from any channel, email, fax, or what have you. It identifies suppliers and buyers automatically. It extracts key data that you need to drive your processes as well as your business. It maps automatically invoices and POs, and it facilitates touchless processing, nirvana in our industry. And most importantly, it delivers a compelling ROI for AP organizations. And I know we have a bunch of questions, so let's get to those, Bruce, with the time we have remaining. Our first question from an attendee: do you first have to streamline purchase order lines to match invoice lines? In other words, coordinate with your vendors in order to get a good match on your invoice and PO auto matching?
Not normally. It's intelligent enough to understand the information contained within the PO database, the PO records, and then be able to understand what information did I receive in the invoice. So the formatting and things, it's nice to be able to have that level of control or level of influence. The reality is that many companies are set. The way they generate it is the way they generate it. The way they submit it is the way they submit it. And influencing that is very difficult. So technology has to be intelligent enough and tolerant enough to be able to work with whatever format that we get delivered and be able to match that to whatever the format is and the context is within the database. So it's a normal occurrence that we have to just deal with as part of standard business.
He wants to know, what's the difference between IDR and OCR, optical character recognition? Are they the same, would be more common to use when talking about electronic capture of invoices?
The technology that you use to read the text and lift the text off of the paper document. So the optical character recognition. The term IDR is related to the overall concept of the process of extracting the data, which is done through OCR, applying business rules, data validation rules, keying instruments to be able to correct the information. So IDR is the entire process, and document recognition is the entire process. OCR is a technology that the process leverages. Some invoices may have handprint. Some invoices may have other optical marks. Some, things like that are all technologies that the systems use to read information. So OCR is a recognition technology. IDR is the complete process.
Andy wants to know, how do you handle the added freight on an invoice not received on a purchase order in order for the transaction to be touchless?
That's a great question, and it really depends on the internal business rules of the system. Sometimes there's a tolerance, sometimes there's a calculation. It really depends on the structure of the organization and how they want to handle exceptions. Most customers have what we call a precision bias system. It means additional information would be flagged and reviewed manually. If we're expecting a certain amount, and now all of a sudden we have a different amount, but we can identify that the amount is this added freight, we can bring that as a business rule as an exception to the process. Identify that to a user who may want to validate that in fact is true, and validate that the terms of the freight was proper to be billed as part of the system. So it really depends on the internal business operations and the goals of the system. It's a great example of a potential exception that the system now has to understand how do we want to rectify and validate. Some people would say, we identified that as being the freight charge, let that go straight through. Others would say, I want to validate that the freight charge was in fact counted and that the amount was within our tolerance before we send it straight through. So it varies on the business rules of the particular entity. Normally that's dictated by the amount of the exception.
Contact information is on the screen, and I also want to point out that we, as well as myself, will be at the IFM AP and P2P conference next week at Walt Disney World Resort in Florida. Nabby is in booth 321. It's been a lot of fun. With that, I'm going to hand it back to Shelley. Shelley?
Thanks, Mark. Thank you both, Mark and Bruce, for a great presentation today. So as I said, that's all we have time for today's program. If you weren't able to ask your question or you have any more questions, please just email them to webinars@iofm.com. Please see the evaluation form that will appear once you close out of the webinar so that we can better serve your needs in future webinars. Thank you again to all of our participants in today's webinar. This was brought to you by the Accounts Payable Network and sponsored by Abby. Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.